Welcome to Everything Co-op, bringing you information on how cooperatives can help improve your quality of life. This show is being sponsored by the National Co-op Bank, NCB. The NCB is dedicated to strengthening communities nationwide for the delivery of banking and financial services for the nation's cooperatives, their members, and other socially responsible organizations. For more information on the power of community ownership, visit ncb.coop. That's ncb.coop. Now stay tuned for your host, Vernon Oakes.
Good morning, everybody. This is Vernon Oakes. The program is Everything Co-op. We're glad that you're with us this morning. You know, I don't know how you feel, but a lot of people are nervous, anxious. Either they have lost their job, their good government job, you remember those? Or they may be looking at losing their home because they've lost their income. You know, this is nothing new for us, though. This thing of the white man coming and taking from us is nothing new. And we're celebrating Black History Month. The theme this year is African Americans and labor. And people are losing their jobs. Their labor is being canceled out. And as I've said, we've lived through this. Labor is the physical or mental effort needed by individuals to produce goods or services. It's a fundamental component of economic activity. You know, there's different types of labor. My main message to you today, we've been through it before, and we've worked together. We've come together to survive. And that's what we still need to do. With a right attitude. Yes, get upset, be angry, then let's come together and work. You have manual labor. Those are just physical skills. Skilled labor, work that requires specialized training or education. Carpentry, engineering, healthcare are examples. You have unskilled labor. Work that does not require specialized skills or training, such as certain types of retail or service jobs. Wage labor, work performed in exchange for a salary or hourly wage. And then you have forced labor. You know what that is. Work performed under coercion, such as slavery, human trafficking, put into the penal system, forced labor. So, labor is essential to the economy because it does produce goods and services. All right, so African Americans and labor, we've played a fundamental role in providing labor in the United States, shaping the economy, culture, and industries from the colonial areas to right now. So there's several periods of time I want to talk to you about. But you know, we've seen Donald Trumps before. They've come in all kinds of forms and shapes. Main color's white, but it doesn't have to be white. You have some black persons that had slaves. The question becomes, who owns your labor? Who owns your labor? And the second question is, what do you get paid for your labor? Who owns your labor and what do you get paid for it? During the slavery time, like from 1619 to 1865, African Americans were forcefully brought to the U.S. and made to work primarily in agriculture, producing tobacco, cotton, sugar, and rice in the South. And our labor built much of the nation's early infrastructure, roads, railroads, buildings. The wealth that was generated didn't come to us. It fueled the growth of industries in both the North and the South, including textiles, finance, and trade. Our labor during that time fueled the production, and the people that got the wealth were the masters, slave masters, plantation owners, factory owners. They owned our labor. And I found out that my great-great-grandmother was born into slavery. This is on my father's side, my father's mother's side, in Virginia, south of Richmond. So she had 9 children. And so one day while she's working on a plantation at the ripe old age of 13, the master's son saw her and claimed her for his own. So not only did we not own our labor, we didn't own our bodies. He claimed her body. He claimed her and had 9 children by her. I don't know how many children he had by his white wife, but he had 9 children by his black mistress slave. He was supposedly a good slave master in that he had a house for his white wife and their children and a house for his black mistress and 9 children. My great-great-grandmother's second child was Juliet. She was born into slavery, but then she had my grandmother, and my grandmother had my father. Great-great-grandmother, grandmother, great-grandmother, grandmother, father, me. 5 generations. Not that far from slavery. Not that far from when we did not own our labor. And during that time, if you go to 1865 to 1877, post-emancipation and Reconstruction, this is after the Civil War. Many freed black Americans became sharecroppers and tenant farmers. But then we were exploited then. We didn't get paid our value for our labor. We contributed our labor to the growth of railroads, steel mills, and industrial factories, especially in the North and Midwest. And we migrated in the 1916 to 1970s. Millions of black Americans moved from the South to northern and western cities to escape racial violence and seek better job opportunities, to get more pay for our labor, to have control over our labor. We became key in the workforce of automotive manufacturing in Detroit, steel production in Pittsburgh and Chicago, shipbuilding and war industries through both world wars. Despite discrimination, in spite of discrimination, black workers played a crucial role in forming labor unions. Here we go. We had to come together. We had to come together to work together in order to confront those people that had power over us, had control over our labor, had control over how much they paid us for our labor, or not at all. Then we had the civil rights era in the 1960s, 50s through the 70s, push for equal employment opportunities. That led to laws like the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Black Americans gained access to professional and government jobs. There we go with those good government jobs. Expanding into education, medicine, law, and business. So we come out of slavery. We go into sharecropping and Jim Crow, where whites in power still want to control our labor. And were. Then we migrated north, west, so we could get into jobs, better paying jobs, better position, and have control over our labor. And from the 1980s to the present, we've contributed to driving force in every industry, including healthcare, technology, entertainment, entrepreneurship. We've shaped labor rights movements, advocating for racial and economic justice. And despite tremendous progress, there's still disparities. Black workers often facing wage gaps, job discrimination, and unusual access to economic opportunities. So we've been integral. We've been vital to the growth of the United States. And we've done these increases while fighting for fair treatment and equal rights in the workplace. Sometimes getting it, sometimes not, sometimes going forward, and as today with Trump and Vance and Elon Musk, we're going backwards again. I've had some to say that Donald Trump is not a racist. He looks like one to me. Acts like one, talks like one. That is all about getting power over black folks' labor, making sure that we do not get gains, and he and his wealthy people get more and more and more and more. Plantation owners in California in the olden days, they were called Dons. They were the landowners, had big plantation, big ranches, and they wanted more and more and more, and all they would do is extract. Take from blacks, Mexicans, Hispanics, women, and whites. Poor whites don't fare any better. I found that out growing up in West Virginia. But it's always amazing to me that they wanted some power, and they got power by putting us down. Didn't have control over our labor, because more often, too often, they were as poor as we were or worse. But they would try to put us down with their voices, with what they said. So here we go with Donald Trump. But before we come into Donald Trump, let's look, what did our ancestors do to survive? You know, they brought over on those ships, and Jessica Gordon Nimhard talks about it in her books. We've had people talking about mutual aid societies. We've had people talking about susus. That's a financial institution where you may have 10 people putting in $1 a month back in the day. And so you'd end up with $10, and those 10 people each month got $10. It's a way of saving, way of working together. So these mutual aid networks, freedom farms, grocery cooperatives, these were things that we formed to survive. And I gotta tell you, I think we also had to have a mental capacity to work together, to no matter what was happening, we could have a smile on our face when we worked together, when we raised our children. May not when we interacted with the master or the overseers, but we would get together in order to survive. It depended on us working together and sharing resources. Back in the day, they may have shared a small kitchen garden to provide more variety of food. Whenever they had those that had opportunity to earn money would pool those earnings to buy each other's freedom. They formed, like I said, mutual aid societies through religious and fraternal institutions. There was a mutual aid insurance company founded in 1898. North Carolina Mutual became one of the largest black-owned businesses in America. They pooled their members' dues and monthly fees to use to bury a member, provide a small stipend for widows and orphans for health care access, etc. So as more and more blacks became free, the mutual aid societies became larger and covered more services. Some involved mutual insurance companies, freed African Americans those early years, and after the Civil War also pooled their money and labor to buy and run a farm or jointly buy farm supplies and reduce their costs. This thing of coming together, we brought with us on the boats, and we've used that throughout hard times, whether slavery, the Depression, the Great Recession, whatever the hard times are. Okay? Donald Trump. Here we go. We have to come together. Right mental attitude. Be angry for a while. Mourn the loss of your job. Mourn the loss of your house or your college fund, mourn the loss that you have. Then let's get up and work. Let's get up and work together. His recent policies, this is Trump's recent policies, have significantly impacted labor dynamics in the United States. Rescinding diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, that's the DEI. Last month, President Trump signed an executive order titled Ending Illegal Discrimination and Restoring Merit-Based Opportunity. Boy, illegal discrimination, that's our original sin, slavery and discrimination against black folk. And whenever we then say, hey, as a country, we're going to put in programs, calling them diversity, equity, and inclusion, to help those that have been discriminated against all of these years. Since the 1600s, we've been discriminated against. So he's now calling illegal discrimination and restoring merit-based opportunities. Restoring isn't right either. Not a merit-based opportunities. So this now turns around all of the things that Lyndon Johnson did, all of the presidents, including Biden and Obama, changes all of those. That this law now, this executive order prohibits federal departments from issuing contracts to private organizations that enforce DEI frameworks. So this one decreased the likelihood of individuals and minority groups, including us, from securing employment opportunities. So here we go again. It's nothing new. Just different people wanting to control our labor and not give us opportunities. There was a study, a trade impact study on underserved communities. The Trump administration has canceled this U.S. International Trade Commission study. It aimed to analyze how trade policies affect underserved communities and workers. You know, these are black, brown, and native communities. This study was intended to provide valuable data on how job losses from offshoring and supply chain decisions impact people of color. It's just another step backwards in addressing the specific challenges faced by black Americans, black workers in the economy. So he canceled that. He rescinded DEI. And now the biggie is he's reducing the federal workforce. This raised concerns because this would disproportionately impact black employment. The government, jobs, has historically been a significant employer of black Americans, offering stable jobs and opportunities for advancement. That stability is so important to raising a family. That's why there's so much upset now. That's why there's so much anger, because we don't have these stable jobs. And then he rescinded DEI, and this has influenced corporate DEI policies. Several major U.S. companies, including Deloitte, have scaled back their diversity, education, and inclusion policies. Deloitte announced it would end its DEI goals and reports, reflecting new government practices. This may limit, I would say, this will probably limit efforts to promote workplace diversity and inclusion, affecting black employees, representation and advancement opportunities. Again, we've seen this before. Nothing new. Let's learn from our ancestors. Coming over on the boats or working on the plantations or working through Jim Crow, it was coming together, collectively, working together, pooling our resources, learning how to work together, learning how to govern a business together. That's what we need to do in this time. Yes, good government jobs are down, and they'll probably be down under Donald Trump for the next 4 years, and depending on who comes after that. So responds, let's get together. Let's move it. So the policies that Trump has created has moved American government away from initiatives designed to address historical inequalities and promote diversity in the workplace. Those programs were there to increase opportunities for blacks. So what's the answer? Corporate businesses offer a powerful way for black Americans and other minority groups to create jobs. Let's own our labor. We can build economic independence and counteract discriminatory labor policies that this president is going through, where we've seen it in the past. So we're going to talk about forming cooperative businesses, what they are, and how you can benefit by owning your own labor after we come back from the break. But a cooperative business is a business. The difference is created by its members for the benefit of its members. It's owned and controlled by its members. The members have a say. They own the profit, and they have a say of what they do with that profit. That's a cooperative business. And that's the answer I bring you today of all of this upset that Donald Trump is creating. We'll be back and talk more about how you create a co-op. Welcome back, everybody. This is Vernon Oakes, and the program is Everything Co-op. And we're celebrating Black History Month, where the theme is African Americans and labor. And what I've just talked to you about in the first half is, for many years, Black Americans in the United States did not own their labor. Their labor was owned and controlled by the white master, or the factory owner, or the farmer that owned the land. We've been on the program now for a little over 11 years. We're in our 12th year now. And National Co-op Bank has sponsored us. NCB mission is to provide financial programs for low-income communities. And they've been doing this since the 80s. So they're good friends to black and brown communities, because that's where you see low-income communities. And we'll talk about them a little bit more when we talk about how you form a co-op. So there are 4 types of co-ops. I'm going to quickly go over these types of co-ops. I've grouped them into worker co-ops. That's a co-op that's owned and controlled by its employees. They could be construction companies, tech companies, cleaning companies. As a matter of fact, there's a slogan, and my first cousin and producer, Pat Thornton, gave me a cup for Christmas and a T-shirt that says, "There's a co-op for that." Anything you can think of, you can create a co-op for it. Any problem you have in your communities, you can create a co-op. And they have been created throughout time to solve community problems. Then there's consumer co-ops. And these are co-ops that are owned and controlled by the people that buys the products and services. Food co-ops, housing co-ops, rural electric co-ops, they're all forms of consumer co-ops. So in a food co-op, if it's a consumer co-op, then the people that come and shop there are the people that own and control that business. Another example are credit unions. It's 140 million Americans that belong to credit unions. Lots of money, lots of power. These credit unions are owned and controlled by its members. So they are a place to look for when you need loans, when you need to start your co-op, are credit unions. The people that make deposits and have checking accounts, they're the ones that own and control. Too often the credit union members housing co-op members, food co-op members that are consumer co-ops, they don't know they own and control it. And that's why we have this program. That's why NCB helped to promote this program, to get people to understand, hey, I have power, use it. Then there's producer or marketing co-ops. These are farmers or artists are coming together, businesses come together and create another business to market the products that they produce. It may be a dairy farm in Wisconsin that their milk or milk products, if they're produced into cheese or cottage cheese, yogurt, it may sell in California or New York, where that individual Wisconsin farmer could not send their milk products to those places. So they have many more markets they can sell to. And then you have purchasing co-ops. Farmers have been using this forever, it seems like, and artists are now beginning to use it. Different organizations are using it. And that's when they come together and form a business that purchases what they need to produce whatever they produce. And for a farmer, it could be seed, it could be fertilizer, it could be gas. They may come together and own a piece of equipment that they share. But the purchasing co-op buys this in bulk. And then they know, the employees of the purchasing co-op knows the vendors, knows the best quality seeds and fertilizer, etc., so that they can get the best price because they're buying in bulk. The best product at the best price. So those are the four types. So, you could start a co-op just by looking around your community and seeing what's needed. And then gather like-minded individuals. It could be from your church, your Mason Lodge, your mosque. It could be any group of people come together, find like-minded people, and form this business that you see a need. In 1934, there was a group, the Bricks Rural Life School. It was run by the American Missionary Association. People of like mind belongs to this missionary association. They created a program of adult education because the two things that the master don't want you to do is to get educated and vote. Why? Because they have control over you. If they keep you ignorant, barefoot, then they control you. If they don't let you to vote, they get to say who's in charge of the governance of these local governance or state governance or federal government. And I got to tell you, anytime they don't want you to do something, you got to do it. Got to get educated. So 1934, this Bricks Rural Life School was formed to provide adult education for African Americans, cooperative development. 2 years later, the school organized a credit union. Okay, so in 1936, they organized a credit union to pool their resources so that they could buy things or start businesses. Members then jointly bought a tractor. So now they're in a purchasing co-op. They had a consumer co-op as a credit union. In 1938, the school opened a cooperative store. Now that food co-op could be owned by the people that work there, so it would be a worker co-op, or it could be owned by the people that shop there, therefore a consumer co-op. So food co-ops could be either. And then in 1938, it developed a health program. Look, these are tough times. And these people came together to form these different businesses to support themselves, owned and controlled by them. Okay. So this is the answer today. How do we create these programs? Identify a need. They identified 4 or 5 needs. They gathered like-minded individuals. We say develop a business plan. And then do what's legal to make the business legal, okay? You want to register the company. This is often formed, they've often formed by LLC or nonprofit structures. But you want to make sure that you're legal and you have your EIN number, your your tax ID number, and you can take care of business. Create a business plan, form the co-op. And then it's like, how do you fund the co-op? How do you get the money to operate the business? Today, we could use crowdfunding. You could raise startup capital with local supporters and on platforms like Kickstarter or GoFundMe. Credit unions and CDFIs, community development financial institutions, they're there to help. Credit unions are there to help. They not only loan money, they don't not only take your deposits, but they train you in how to take care of your dollars. Make sure that you don't overspend. Put into savings for starting businesses or getting education. There were government grants. I don't know what they're going to look like anymore. If you can get grants from Small Business Administration through the Department of Agriculture, as this president is taking away programs, that is a place also that he is hitting or will hit. And then the members invest. It's called a membership fee. It's usually a small amount, could be paid over time. So these are ways of funding your co-op. There's also the thing called sweat equity. The next piece is, how do you expand the business? So you have your business, and it could be any of the 4 types we talked about, but you could form partnerships with other minority-owned businesses and organizations, or non-minority owned. If it's a co-op and they're working by the cooperative values and principles, and I say a co-op is a co-op if it's working under the 7 principles of cooperation and the 10 values of cooperation. But if they're working under those, it's like the first principle says it's open to anybody. A co-op is open to anybody regardless of gender, race, political affiliation, religious affiliation. It just doesn't matter. It's open. If it's a co-op, it's open to anybody. So you could form partnerships. There's the 6th principle of co-ops, which is cooperation among co-ops. That's why you could form partnerships with any co-op. If it's operating as a co-op, that's your business could form a partnership with your local credit union, your local rural electric co-op, housing co-op. So work together. This helps to create more and more wealth. Putting in the membership fee of $100, crowdfunding, getting loans, maybe some grants. I think they'll probably dry up, at least from the federal government. There may be some philanthropic organization that may have some grants that you could go after. And then you could have potentially government and corporate contracts. We used to have, you could apply for contracts that had a minority set aside. I think under this administration, most of those will be gone. Jessica Gordon-Emhart talks about in her book Collective Courage that you have to have education and training. But it must go on, like in the group in 1924, they started because they wanted to educate adult education. And she says that you have to continue education. They had education clubs. And they had this 2 years at this Bricks Rural Life School before they opened their first business. And you have to continue with the education ongoingly. And that's the 5th principle of cooperation, and the reason that I fell in love with this model in the first place was it was education, training, and information. Had to provide this education, training, and information for the members so you can make informed decisions, intelligent decisions, and learning how to work together. How do you solve conflict? And there's going to be conflict. The Bible says something where 2 or more are gathered, he will be there also. I say that's because there's going to be conflict. Ask any married couple. 2 or more. There's going to be conflict. So if you start a court with 5 people, you know there's going to be differences of opinion. Don't get upset when it is. Learn from it. Learn how to work with people so you can pick the best choice. It may be if two people are having differences of opinion, one wants to go left, the other wants to go right. Talk it through. That's what you learn. Talk it through. Maybe going right is best, or left is best, or going down the middle. Who knows until you talk it through. Work it out and learn from each other. And then you have to always market, promote your business. That's continually. Right now we have social media, which is a low-cost way of marketing. You can have community events, networks, co-op networks, minority networks. Just continue to market your business. And again, any business, every business, any problem can be solved with a co-op. There is a co-op for that. That's the quote. There is a co-op for that. We have a co-op in Chicago called Shy Fresh Kitchen. It's a worker-owned co-op. It's owned by the 5 members that started it, and they may have other now members. It's a food service co-op. They created jobs for themselves. They were formerly incarcerated. Its president, Kim, I heard her say once that she didn't think she could own a car, let alone be an owner in a business. And it's been highly successful. They have bought a multi-family building. They were looking at a daycare center. They decided not to do that. But now they can look at, because they have been successful, a successful business that they started in 2020 at the height of the COVID pandemic. There was a need, food for churches and schools and other institutions. They started small, rented a kitchen. Now they own their own kitchen. There's Ujamaa Collective in Pittsburgh. Black women artists, necklace, paintings, textiles, owned and controlled by black women for the benefit of black women. I went there shopping one Christmas. They have great products, competitively priced. There's Cooperation Jackson in Jackson, Mississippi. It's a network of black-led worker co-ops focused on self-sufficiency. The principles of co-op are, you have to take care of yourself. You have to take care of yourself, which is the first 2 principles of cooperation, and then the 6th one is solidarity. You take care of yourself, you take care of the group. You take care of yourself within the group. Cooperation Jackson has several worker cooperatives that they can band together to sustain themselves. Now you got to know that the white power structure don't want to see these successful businesses. Things like Black Wall Street in Tulsa. They will come in and steal, rape, rob. So there's always a need to protect. Always a need to protect. When we own and control our businesses, Black Americans and other minority groups can build economic resilience. And we can reduce our reliance on a discriminatory job market. So this discrimination hasn't started with our current president. He's fueling it. But this discrimination has been around a long, long time. Again, it's the original American sin. Slavery, Jim Crow, redlining, systemic discrimination. It's still in our culture. It's still in our systems. So we can look at service-based worker cooperatives. That's healthcare. There's a Cooperative Home Care Association in New York, Black and Latina-led cooperative employing over 2,000 workers. This is the largest worker co-op in the United States. And this co-op has been working with the largest housing co-op city in New York, so that Cooperative Home Care Association can provide home care for the elderly and disadvantaged that live in Co-op City at competitive prices. But what happens when you have a home care business, and those are difficult businesses because you're dealing with people that are ill, old, cranky. And so the business has to support the healthcare providers. And a co-op is formed for and by its members. So this Home Healthcare Association in New York will allow, better said, is that the members dictate their schedules, which seems simple, but if you're raising a family and you've got to take kids here and there, and you want to take care of your clients, it takes the individual home healthcare provider saying, here's what I can do. And then the business working with that home healthcare provider. And that home healthcare provider normally makes more, maybe $1 or $2 more an hour than the conventional home healthcare provider. Profit is not the motive. So they can afford to pay the worker more, or the workers can afford to pay themselves more. You can have cleaning and janitorial services, clean car wash worker cooperative in LA, delivery and transportation. There's a rideshare or last mile delivery co-op competing against Uber and Amazon Flex in Denver called Green Taxi Cooperative. Here, the taxi cab driver has control over their wages, not the owner of the taxi cab company. Then there's retail and consumer co-ops. Black-owned grocery stores we've already talked about. There's Mandela Grocery Cooperative in Oakland. There is Gem City Market in Dayton. There's Detroit People's Cooperative in Detroit. You have clothing and artisan artist co-op collectives, where a cooperative fashion brand can help black designers access market. And we've already mentioned Ujama as one of those. You have technology and digital cooperatives, freelancer cooperatives. And you can have a black-owned platform for IT professionals, designers, and marketers. They can compete with platforms like Upwork and Fiverr, Fiverr. An example is Collab Cooperative. It's tech freelancers. Any business you can think of, there's a co-op for it. Any problem you have, there's a co-op for that. Community-owned internet providers. Why don't we have our own internet? Come together in different households. Black communities can establish internet service cooperatives to provide affordable access to broadband. Then we have the agriculture and food production. Urban farming co-ops. Have one in Detroit called the Detroit Black Community Food Cooperative. Black farmer cooperatives. Pooling resources can help black farmers get fair prices and access larger markets. We talked about that in terms of marketing co-ops and purchasing co-ops. There's Shirley Sherrard down in Albany, Georgia, with their New Communities Land Trust, and this was the first land trust in the U.S. There's all types of co-ops that you can form. So just quickly before we go, you've got to get training and support, and we help each other. You have to get funding and grants for minority co-ops. That we talked about that already. We have to develop the business. So you may get help from SBA, minority business development agencies, to help to form them. But you form a core team, develop a business plan, choose a legal structure, seek funding and partnerships. Then you launch it and grow. Start small and grow. Reinvest the profits. This is ways of doing this, and there's all kinds of events happening. Corporation Jackson is having events. Ohio University is having events through this month. Get out and learn how to start your own co-op. Own your own labor. Have a great attitude. Work together. Lift each other up. We've done it from the beginning of time. Do it now in these times, these tough times. Work together. Pool resources. Share in the profits. Continue to learn. Continue to grow. Life lifelong learning. Everybody out there, I'm glad you listened. We look forward to talking to you next Thursday. Please live cooperatively. Work together.
The preceding program was paid for by Everything Co-op.